the switch or? Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission ARB for June 21st. For anyone in the attendee group, if you wish to speak on a particular agenda item, please raise your hand. And with that, let's start with a roll call.
Chairman Steve Lichtenfeld.
Here.
Helen DeFate.
Here.
Carolyn Gatus.
Here.
Aldermanic Representative Richard Lentz.
Here.
City Manager David Gibson.
Here.
George Hedich. Bob Denlow.
Okay, the meeting minutes from the previous meeting will be reviewed and voted upon at a future meeting. So we can move right on into new business. And the first one would be 4 Hillvale Drive. And are the participants here? Yes. Mark has his hand up.
Are you ready for me?
Yes, is it Amy?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know if I should present now or if we're calling on the participants now.
No, we're going to go through the staff report
Okay.
first, and then we'll get back to you.
Okay, I'll go ahead with the staff report. Good
Okay.
evening, Anissa Cumro, Principal Planner with the City of Clayton. This is residential exterior alterations at 4 Hillvale Drive. The review of a modification to a previously approved landscaping plan to include a new pergola on the south side and a new deck on the east side of the home. The 20,000 square foot site is located on the corner of Hillvale Drive and Harcourt Drive. The property has a zoning designation of R2 single family dwelling district. At the Plan Commission Architectural Review Board meeting on March 2nd, 2020, the board reviewed and approved the design of a 4,316 square foot single family residence with a detached 816 square foot 3-car garage. The height of the approved principal structure is 27 feet, and the original project design included 2 patios, a 119 square foot patio on the south side of the home and a 390 square foot patio located on the east side at the rear of the home. The residence is currently under construction. The applicant proposes the following modifications. The patio on the south side of the home will be replaced with a 187 square foot deck with an aluminum tube trellis. The patio on the east side of the home at the rear will be replaced with a 410 square foot elevated deck. The landscaping will be revised to include substantially different plantings from the originally approved plan. The northeast corner of the site will be revised to include a 752 square foot area of artificial turf and a 676 square foot area of compacted limestone. The compacted limestone will be bordered on the eastern property line by a dry laid limestone retaining wall approximately 2 feet in height. A 5-foot aluminum fence is proposed. Formerly, a 6-foot cedar fence was approved. The proposed modifications conform to height and setback requirements of the R2 district. The impervious coverage and structures are located towards the center and northeast corner of the property, leaving larger grassy areas along Hillvale Drive and Harcourt Drive. The courtyard layout of the detached garage located opposite of the north side of the home is maintained. There are no proposed changes to the residence or to the detached garage that were formally approved by the Architectural Review Board. The proposed decks are consistent with the design of other decks in the neighborhood, which are similarly comprised of wood with metal railings. The aluminum overhang proposed for the deck on the south side of the home is observed in other lots throughout the neighborhood. The primary building material for the proposed decks is IPE wood with a 36-inch high black iron handrail. An aluminum tube trellis attached to the residence will hang over the proposed deck on the south side of the home facing Harcourt Drive. The building materials of the residence and the detached garage remain unchanged. The property is a corner lot with 2 front yards. In association with the previous request for the initial design, a 6-foot-tall cedar fence was proposed. The applicant has proposed a 5-foot-tall aluminum fence in its stead, which will similarly enclose the side and rear yards. However, the aluminum fence will completely enclose the area behind the garage along the north property line, whereas the cedar fence enclosed only a small portion of the area behind the garage. While the fencing is not located in a front yard setback, it will be visible from the street and conforms to ARB preferences for decorative front yard fences. The proposed deck on the east side of the property will be surrounded by a dry laid limestone retaining wall approximately 2 feet in height. Staff is of the opinion that the retaining wall is compatible with the home and the character of the neighborhood. In terms of landscaping, the applicant has proposed a redesign of the landscaping on the property. The formally approved landscape plan met the native tree requirement with 63.6% native and provided a surplus of 7,729 square feet of canopy coverage. The design included an attractive and layered design of trees, shrubs, perennials, and ground cover, and is included with a packet for your reference. In contrast, the proposed landscape plan provides a canopy surplus of 10,020 square feet, but contains fewer perennials and more shrubs than the former plan. This disparity is most apparent on the north side of the garage, where 11 evergreen trees, 6 perennials, and 4 shrubs have been removed from the design. The proposed landscape plan does not include any plantings on the north side of the garage. The mix of grasses, shrubs, and perennials on the west side of the proposed garage facing Hillvale Drive have been replaced with a single black Tupelo tree. Additionally, there are some outstanding comments from the city's contracted landscape architect that should be addressed prior to issuance of building permit amendments. These comments can cover the relocation of some plantings and a lack of plantings along the garage. As a result of the proposed changes, the impervious coverage has increased from 0.08 acres to 0.14 acres, resulting in an impervious area of 29.79%, which is below the 55% maximum allowed. The project as proposed is in conformance with the requirements of the R2 district and the architectural review guidelines. Staff is of the opinion that the plan is compatible in terms of mass and design with existing nearby homes. However, more layered foundation plantings should be incorporated along the north side of the detached garage. Staff's recommendation is to approve with the following conditions to be reviewed by staff prior to the issuance of the amended building permit. First, the applicant shall adjust the location of the proposed river birch tree to avoid being over the top of the new water and gas utilities. Second, the applicant shall provide foundation plantings along the north side of the detached garage to consist of 11 evergreen trees, small shrubs or perennials or ground covers. Finally, the applicant shall update the drainage map submitted previously for the property and mitigate any additional runoff. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. I see Mark Rubin is signed on and another telephone.
Correct. That's my, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, great.
It looks like you have 2 connections.
I do. So I'm talking to you all on my ear pods. So that's my phone connection.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, welcome, Mark. Do you have any further thoughts based on the staff report?
Yeah, I will walk you through just briefly the intent here, and you know, like any typical developer, of course, I've changed my mind here a couple of times, and in addition, we're trying to enhance certain aspects of certainly the landscape plannings as well as some of the architectural effects, and that's done through a series of moves, and these, you know, she gave a great detailed explanation of what we're doing here. What I did is I took a step back. The original design was done by Baxter Gardens. I have longstanding history with them doing a lot of my residential work. And I made the conscious choice to augment, and I engaged Artelope, who does some very, some more sophisticated type of projects in and around St. Louis. And we came up with a little different strategy. as opposed to what I had, originally presented to you all. And that's where we created some different layers through different textures, both in the decking material, as pointed out, that's all Ipe decking with iron railing. So that'll give just a sense of character in terms of our materials for the horizontal surface. And then the pergola is an added accent to the south. The viewpoint on the south, I've got a series of windows off the south family room, and that really overlooks, it's got a great viewpoint. It overlooks into the common ground off of Harcourt. So yeah, I'm playing with some of the views a little differently, and also some of the building materials a little bit differently, and I've made some enhancements. One thing I do want to note and point out on the north, behind the garage, very good point about, the fact that we've removed a fair amount of the plantings that were previously proposed. We have dogs, we have 2 dogs, and this area will be fenced there. And there were actually a series of plantings there, and I got to be frank, I mean, it's really not going to be very visible to where these plantings were originally placed. So I'm not so sure that is such an advantaged location for plantings. And I guess more importantly for our practical use, a lot of this stuff is really probably going to get kind of torn up and destroyed. And that's why I've kind of restructured this whole back planting area altogether. So I would like for you all to consider for me not to have to go back and put all those plantings back in place on that north side in particular. The landscaping, what we did is we created, before it was a little more whimsical in nature in terms of the design. It was kind of a little more rounded in weaving in and out. This is a little more, it's a little more straight lined, a little more rectilinear, I guess, in some of it. It does have a couple of round curves to it. So this was done, very calculated. I'm kind of going for a certain look. We do have layers that kind of line up throughout, certainly that western viewpoint, as well as the south. So this was something we kind of worked through strategically. Any questions I can answer for you all?
Well, Mark, we always have a few questions, so sure, I'll start out. I'm curious about the aluminum fence. Could you either describe it, or do you have a picture of it? Is it an open fence or a solid fence?
It'll be, Steve, it'll be open. So they'll be in traditional, probably 4-inch increments. So relatively traditional in nature. If you look at my plantings on the back, so we've added some taller, more columnar trees. Mm-hmm. So the intent there is in a situation or an application like this, a cedar fence is so hard and blocking. So I'd rather do it through plantings and be a little softer. And quite frankly, to the north, there's already a 6-foot aluminum fence that's intact. So I'm really kind of going to continue that theme across the east portion and avoid a harsh, I think, cedar fence.
Okay, that sounds good. I was hoping it would be open.
Yeah.
And then there appear to be some gates in there with the fence. One at the driveway and one at the south end of the deck. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then you're proposing a an aluminum trellis over the southern deck that would be painted black, as well as the sliding aluminum screens. Will those screens completely cover the windows in the family room at
No.
some point?
No, and that's really not the intent. So it does say sliding,
Yes.
and that's really they're going to end up being fixed most likely. Putting a track system in is going to be, I think, a little mechanically challenging and costly, quite frankly. So they'll end up being fixed, and they will not go all the way across.
Oh,
And
okay.
I don't know if I can share my screen. I do have a picture of really what this is modeled after in terms of precedent.
If you can
Susan,
share, yeah, share the
is it
screen. if
possible
you
to
can.
share or no?
Yes, we should see it.
Okay, great. Here, hold on. Let me see. I don't see where I can share. Oh, here uh-oh. Oh, here we go. Now I can. And what can you all see?
We see your screen and we see a relatively smaller inset. There we are. That shows an aluminum trellis and aluminum screens. So are your screens at the edge of the trellis or are they near the windows?
At the edge. So
Oh,
so therefore, yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
It's nicer than I had imagined. Okay.
Yeah, this is actually off of a restaurant in Northern California, Napa Valley, that I took this from.
Well, we're not going to approve outdoor dining in a restaurant here, but it'll look nice.
I do like to cook too, Steve. I do like to cook, Steve, as well.
Okay, good. I had one other question, and I may need staff to help me. You have added the compacted limestone paving as well as the turf, the turf area, which I think is artificial.
Correct.
How do, Anissa, how do those affect the impervious coverage? I know they're nowhere near the limit, but are they considered impervious or pervious?
I can answer that. So the artificial turf is actually considered pervious, and water runs through artificial turf more slowly, according to our Public Works Department, than normal grass. So the impervious coverage is still slightly increased with the addition of that compacted limestone area, which is why we have added in that third recommendation that their drainage map be updated and any additional stormwater be mitigated prior to issuing the building permit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's open it up and see what everyone else is thinking. Rich?
Sure. I had the same question about the turf and the limestone. I assume, Mark, that's all because you've got these dogs, they're going to tear it up. I mean, is that what you're doing? Making a dog run out of this?
So the turf is actually, it's a little more for my son, who's he's active and a little athlete. And the crushed limestone is probably it's really a little more architectural in nature. So we actually used a system at Clayton on the Park that has a binder in it. And what we're going to do with that space is we'll have like Adirondack chairs, and we'll have a fire pit in the center. And so it'll just be, in the back, we've kind of created a little bit more of, call it an urban backyard. So it'll have a deck, it'll have some plantings. We'll then have this crushed limestone area, and then I'll have a turf space with, just kind of linear trees lining each side. So yes, some of it is, for ease of maintenance and upkeep, and it'll obviously, the dogs, they'll destroy, regular grass. And the turf will be irrigated as well. And it does have, it has a drainage field underneath it. So that's the intent for the space.
Okay. And the fencing, I'm confused where the fence runs. Does it run at the that end of the garage, or you're saying it runs around to the other end of the garage? It doesn't show it on the landscape plan. I'm not sure where it shows.
So can you see my architectural site plan?
Yes.
Page 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay,
here and I just put up.
Okay.
You got it. So here's a fence.
Yep.
And
No, I
then the fence, there you go. Fence on the north is already in place. So then it picks back up on the east, and then it runs back into the deck.
Okay. So what is to your north?
So here,
Yes.
house that faces Y down, right on the corner. And that's their backyard. They have a driveway, and then it's really a driveway. And then,
Okay, there's a driveway running. I'm just trying to understand when you aren't putting, if you're just putting dogs there and making a dog run out of that behind the garage, what are they gonna see? And what is is that what their view is a dog run?
their view is, so, I have these trees that are lining here. And then I've got, the turf area. And then this is kind of, yes, meant for kind of the dogs.
But from their side, what's immediately beyond your property?
So they have plantings in front of this. So this has got some brush and overgrowth.
Okay.
So this is all lined from their side.
All right. So I'm just want to make sure that it's not just completely open to their patio or something, and they're just going to be staring at a garage with a dog run. They've got they've got landscaping there that is that true?
There is, it's a little less formal. There's a driveway. There's a fair amount of distance from their back. Their grade from Y down is a fair amount. And so they just have a deck that's on the house. Then they have a tuck under garage. And then the drive comes in off of Hillvale. So, they're 100 feet away easily.
Okay.
So they're a fair distance away from this.
All right. Okay. That was really the only that and I agree with the recommendation that we need the updated drainage. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Carolyn?
Actually, I just asked to be skipped over because I've got a guy out here weed whacking and it's very loud. If Helen you go and I can go after, is that okay?
Sure.
All right,
Helen?
thank you.
Okay, I really don't have any questions, Steve. You asked all of my questions with regard to the trellis and the screens. So I do like the look of the trellis and the screens. So my questions are taken care of.
Okay, I can go then. It's fine. It's quiet now for a second. I have a question about the silver maple coming out. Is there a way to have regraded that area to still drain properly and go to the east of that tree and miss it and keep it? It seems like a
All right.
shame. Or do a tree well.
Let's see. So the silver maple is
Where the black
where-
thumb is going, the two below.
let's see, on the, I'm looking on my plan. I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's on the east side of the garage if north is down,
East side.
which is odd to have north down. That's okay.
John, I think, are you looking at the original plan too?
No, I'm looking at the latest one. You've got a,
And you're asking about removing though?
no, I was
the-
thinking about why remove the 30-inch silver maple if you can get away with not removing it.
I think it's gone.
It's
And that's
already
what I'm
gone?
asking.
Oh,
Well, the house is, yeah, I mean, the house is 75% done. And that's why I'm trying to,
all right. Well, I'm looking at
oh
Baxter's
yeah,
plan that just got submitted, so I didn't go out there today because I didn't get these in until late, but
got it.
okay.
Yeah, so I apologize.
Never
I
mind.
think it's already gone. That's why. Yeah, the house,
Okay.
the garage is in place and
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
yeah.
Hold on. So compacted limestone pavement. I want to give you a little bit of information from experience on that. Even though it's compacted, you can still track that stuff everywhere. I would encourage you to think about a different kind of compacted pavement. We did that. That's what we did out at Forest Park.
Totally.
Dual pass or have the mixed in component compound, and you still can see the traces where everybody walks, right? So I would be very careful about using any kind of limestone chat sort of compacted thing, even mixed with something. It actually will move. And in residential with dogs, that's just my concern for you. Okay.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, just think about it. I wanted to ask you, I saw that the pear trees are being removed, or all of the pear trees on the property being removed? The existing, or is that just the ones that you?
Oh, and in the back?
All pear trees? I see that you listed a bunch of them getting removed, so are all on the property getting removed though, because they're very invasive? I was just,
Yeah, I mean, most of them I think are along the east side.
Mhm.
And we are showing removing them.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a challenge. And I know that they are invasive. You know, right now they're providing actually some pretty good coverage. You know, so it's a little bit of sacrifice today, I guess, for tomorrow. Because this viewpoint to our neighbor's property is kind of up close and center. I mean, so I think the answer is, yeah, I kind of need to remove them in order to provide, I think, the right environment for long-term, but it does come with a little sacrifice of some coverage right now.
how many are remaining?
I think, I mean, as shown, none. I mean, are you an advocate of them or not?
No, I'm an advocate to get rid of them.
Yeah, got it.
Then they're gone.
Got it.
Right, so they're gone. That's what I was asking. All
Yeah.
of- Okay, all right. So yay, good job. I really like the plan, the newer plan. I tend to agree with the side of the garage being that nobody actually will really see being excessive. I would rather you spend your money in areas that people will see and experience. So I appreciate that. I also, when I looked at this, and I have to be honest with the entire board here, that when I looked at this, I'm like, Baxter really came around. Now that I hear it was, I'm like, well, duh. I know by Renee. I mean, she's a friend, and I was surprised when you said that because I don't know why her name's not on it, but that's okay. But it's
So she did the she just did the concept for me.
okay.
And yeah, they're great. Obviously, very sophisticated firm.
Yeah, it was really funny though, because I
and-
looked at it and I was like, Baxter has come around and I was excited. But yeah, so yeah, I don't have any other comments. I'm disappointed about that silver maple. I'm not a big believer in foundation planting. I would rather that reaches out and you get rid of lawn a little bit more. But that's just an aesthetic thing and a environmental comment on my part. So we won't take that anywhere. It's just a suggestion in the future. If you want to get rid of more lawn and be more environmentally friendly, then you could actually, champion that in your neighborhood. So
What you're saying, take the grasses out further? Is that what you're saying?
yes, start to branch out from
Yeah.
the architecture a little bit more and experience the entire landscape and not just have it be foundation planting.
Yeah,
Which is great. I mean,
which I love the look. Yeah.
yeah, you have a great start here. You've got a really good start and you kudos for that. Thank you. So
Thank you.
that's all I had to say. That's all from me.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. David, comments?
I don't have any additional comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mark, do you have any other comments for us?
Don't think so, Steve.
No? Okay. Anybody else have any final issues? Don't hear anything. Well, we do have a staff recommendation to approve with, now there are 3 conditions. And I think we'll have to talk about number 2. That would be the plantings on the north side of the garage. So before we go to a motion, let's have some comments on the evergreen trees, shrubs, etc. behind the garage or not. Carolyn, I think we heard from you. Rich, did you make a definitive comment on that?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to understand what the neighbors were seeing, and it sounds like there is enough screening or landscaping, even though it's not formal landscaping. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's honeysuckle, as many of those situations are. But so I can go along with that.
Okay. Helen?
I would agree with Carolyn and Rich. As long as there is landscaping, between the garage wall and the neighbor, what the neighbor will see from their windows or their backyard, I think it's fine.
Okay. David?
I'm okay with it as well.
Okay. So am I, having gone over there and walked around. I think there's enough growth or landscaping, I'm not sure which it is, on the neighbor's property. So I think we could get rid of staff recommendation 2. So Carolyn, you want to take a crack at the motion?
Sorry, but what's number 3?
Oh, a drainage map update that Anissa read into it. Anissa,
I'm
would you
sorry. Okay.
read that number 3 again to us?
Sure, yeah. The third condition is to update the drainage map submitted previously for the property and mitigate any additional runoff.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations number 1 and number 3 and omitting number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, well, Mark, you're on the way. Oh, there you are. So good luck with completing. It looks pretty good now. We can't wait till the fence comes down.
Myself as well, obviously, and more importantly, my wife.
Yes. Well, good luck with completing it, and we'll see you in there sometime in the near future.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. We can move on to new business number 2 and 3, 132 North Brentwood, a new house.
132 North Brentwood Boulevard. This is the review of a site plan associated with a new single-family residence. The 6,303 square foot site is located on the east side of North Brentwood Boulevard between Maryland Avenue and Westmoreland Avenue. The property has a zoning designation of R4 Low Density Multiple Family Dwelling District and is the former site of the YWCA building. The applicant is proposing a new 3-story single-family residence measuring 6,839 square feet of air-conditioned space with an attached 4-entry 4-car garage. The height of the proposed residence is 38 feet 11 inches as measured from the average existing grade to the deck line of the roof. The maximum allowable height is 3 stories or 45 feet, whichever is less. In terms of compatibility, the property to the west contains a single-family home and the property to the north is currently being developed with a single-family structure. East of the property is the access drive and surface parking for a multifamily building known as Maryland Walk. The project meets the setback, height, and impervious coverage requirements of the R4 zoning district. The plans show 2 HVAC units located at the rear of the house and 1 HVAC unit located along the middle of the south facade. The northeast corner units will be screened from the west and south by the principal structure and from the north and east by evergreen shrubs. The south unit will be screened from the north, east, and west by the principal structure and from the south by evergreen shrubs. Trash will be stored in an approximately 64-foot trash enclosure located under the front entry stairs adjacent to the garage. In terms of stormwater drainage, the total lot impervious coverage on the site was formerly 67.21% when it housed the YWCA building, which was removed in 2019. The proposed plans decrease the total lot impervious coverage to 53.34%, which is under the maximum 55% total lot coverage allowed. Front yard impervious coverage is limited to 45% in the R4 district. The proposed front yard coverage is 44.48%. The stormwater runoff prior to removal of the building is 0.490 cubic feet per second. The proposed runoff is 0.467 cubic feet per second, which represents a 0.023 decrease. The stormwater plan has been reviewed and deemed acceptable. In terms of landscaping, the proposed landscape design provides a mix of plantings to address functional and design factors of the project. The existing canopy coverage of 628 square feet is to remain with no additional removal planned. The proposed plan includes a surplus of 240 square feet of canopy coverage and meets the native tree requirement with 33.3% native proposed. In terms of utilities, the location of the gas, sewer, and water connections from the main to the house are shown underground in the front yard. The electric line connection will run underground from the rear to the northeast corner of the house. The Public Works Department has found the utilities plan acceptable. In terms of lighting, exterior lighting is proposed at the front exterior door and soffits. All exterior lights will be 75 watts or less. There are 8 criteria listed on page 3 of the report that the Planning Commission should consider in their review and decision. In conclusion, the height, setbacks, and impervious coverage as proposed are in conformance with the requirements of the R4 Low Density Multiple Family Dwelling District. Stormwater will be adequately managed on site, and the landscape plan features plantings that are appropriate for the size of the site and character of the neighborhood. Staff is of the opinion that the project meets the criteria for site plan approval, and our recommendation is to approve as submitted. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I see we have Bobby Slavin, the developer, Christopher Pike, the architect, and Doug Leipziger, the engineer here. So who would like to make any comments on the staff report?
I will go ahead. This is Doug Leipziger with Civil Design. Good evening, everybody.
Welcome.
Thanks. As Anissa said, we are doing a new 3-story residence with basement. We are within all the setbacks that are prescribed, and the lot drains from east to west towards North Brentwood, and we are picking up all of the stormwater drainage and connecting it into the new storm sewer that was built as part of the previous project, the public sewer. As Anissa said, all the utilities except for electric are coming into the front, and the trash room is underneath the front porch. And I think that's all I have to say, unless anybody has questions for me.
Well, Doug, I do have a question. I'm looking at the drainage area map, the DAM sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm reading it correctly, both the northeast and the northwest drainage areas then get piped around to the front. Is that correct? But I can't see where they're dropping into.
But yeah, you're correct. You said northeast and northwest. Yeah, so the north.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Northeast and southeast.
Correct. Yeah, they're both being piped basically along the side of the buildings. If you look at sheet C2, it's kind of close to the property line, but on the south side, but it's a storm line on the south side and another one on the north side. And it's picking up all the downspouts for the house on both sides, and it goes to the west, and then the southern part comes across the front of the front yard near the sidewalk.
And does it go directly into the sanitary sewer? Or
storm sewer?
Storm sewer. Oh, I
Mhm.
see that now. Okay.
Yeah. There's a manhole there at the
Yeah.
northwest corner of the property.
Okay, so that should keep water from this property from moving either to the north or the south onto adjacent properties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the only water that would flow off-site would go into the manhole or probably over the sidewalk and onto North Brentwood.
That's correct. There's a very small, like, front yard on the south side that would go into, it's basically the southwestern quadrant on the drainage area map. That small area would go overland to North Brentwood.
Okay. Okay, that answered my question on the site drainage.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem.
Any other questions for Doug Leipziger?
No, that was the only one I had as well. So thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else? Let's see, either Bobby or Christopher, do you have any comments on the site plan review?
I do not.
Okay, well, let's open it up to any other members. I think you've already heard from both Rich Lintz and me. Carolyn, and this is site plan review only.
Right. I really like this plan. I like the plan. I like the environment with the other building that's very similar to it. I couldn't find anything to comment on, which is so weird for So it's like,
Thanks.
That's very unusual for you, Carolyn.
I know it. I know it. So I'm looking at it, I'm looking, there's no trees getting removed. There's like nothing, offensive in the plantings. It's very similar to the building next to it. I'm like, kudos. No, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I had no comments. So next.
Helen,
No further comments.
okay. David,
No comments.
okay. Well, I think you've heard, I think everyone is in favor of the site plan review. And we do have a recommendation to approve as submitted. So Carolyn, we're back to you.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation to approve as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, we've passed that. So Anissa, we can go back to the ARB.
Once again, this is 132 North Brentwood Boulevard, the review of the design and materials associated with the construction of a single-family residence. As mentioned previously, the site is 6,303 square feet and is zoned R4. The proposed home has a rectangular design and a mansard roof. The building height is approximately 38 feet 11 inches as measured from the average existing grade to the deck line of the roof. The property to the west contains a single-family home, and the property to the north is currently being developed with a single-family structure. East of the property is an access drive and surface parking for the Maryland Walk condominium building. Maryland Walk fronts on Maryland Avenue and North Brentwood Boulevard, wrapping south of the subject site. Beyond the parking lot from Maryland Walk to the east is Midwest Regional Bank. The proposed massing and height support the transition from the larger buildings to the east to the single-family neighborhood to the west. The proposed house features a below-grade 4-car front entry garage. North of Forsyth Boulevard, North Brentwood Boulevard serves as a dividing line for two zoning districts. Properties along the west side of North Brentwood Boulevard are zoned R2 single-family dwelling districts and located in the Clayton Gardens Urban Design District. Properties along the east side of North Brentwood Boulevard are zoned R4 low-density multiple-family dwelling district and are not located in an urban design district. Many of the single-family homes along the west side have garages facing North Brentwood Boulevard. While these are not considered front entry garages based on the orientation of the front door, this orientation is compatible with front entry garage development. Many of the single-family houses along the east side do have front entry garages facing North Brentwood Boulevard. Consistent with the design of other front entry garages in the area, ornamental walls and landscaping are proposed along both sides of the driveway. The proposed massing is articulated on all facades with windows, doors, and other architectural features, including bay windows, limestone banding, and window surrounds, as well as a chimney. Staff believes that the height and massing of the proposed house are compatible with the neighborhood character. The primary building material for the proposed home is red brick with buff-colored stone accent materials. The secondary materials are limestone, James Hardy trim, and stucco board located primarily on the left side elevation surrounding the bay windows. 23% of the left side elevation will be comprised of stucco. Buff limestone surrounds the front entry wood door with a circular window with a limestone surround located just above. Black metal railings are proposed at the bottom of the rectangular first floor windows with a brick soldier course located above. The windows are double hung clad windows off-white in color. Dark asphalt shingles are proposed for the roofing material with copper colored standing seam roofing proposed for the bay windows and rear porch. 2 black carriage style garage doors are proposed. The proposed driveway material and the material for the front entry steps were not specified on the plans. The driveway measures approximately 16 feet wide at the property line and gradually widens to the width of the doors. The garage is a 4-car tandem parking garage with a black carriage style door proposed. Brick-clad retaining walls with cut stone caps are proposed on both sides of the driveway and along the front stairs and porch. The proposed brick will match the primary building material of the house. In conclusion, the proposed house is in conformance with the requirements of the R4 district and the architectural review guidelines. Staff believes the plan is compatible in terms of mass, height, and design with surrounding structures. Staff's recommendation is to approve with one condition, that the applicant shall specify a driveway material at the meeting for architectural review board approval that shall conform to one of the approved materials, stamped or flat concrete, exposed aggregate, brick pavers, per the architectural review guidelines. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I like this house. It looks very good. I also like the mansard roof because it brings the apparent height of the house down very similar to the one just north of it that's either nearing completion or is completed. But Christopher or Bobby, we usually like to look at the materials and the color. Do you have those that you can share on the screen?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I sent Anissa an email with the pictures, and I'm sorry if they came late. It was a big file. I can hold them up in front of my camera, though, if that doesn't come through.
Well, are they similar to what's on A10?
Oh, the renderings, yes. No, it's a red brick here. Let me pull some up. You got, give me 1 second. So
While we're talking and waiting for Chris, the driveway will be aggregate concrete, like similar to next door at 136 North Brentwood.
Okay.
Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear you.
I was saying the driveway will be aggregate concrete, similar to next door.
yeah, for some reason my camera stopped working.
Chris, I can go ahead. I have that email pulled up, so I can try to share
Okay.
that if that works.
Either way, I've got them in hand too. So this is
Okay,
this is
go ahead.
red right here that we're using.
The idea is like a used red brick, like from like an old building. So we wanted a tumbled red brick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, okay, this is the Colby window, but we're going to be using a light cream color from Colby, which is called Cloud. So you're sure you can see that. And the color is Cloud. So it's a real light cream off white. This is like the stucco texture of that side elevation, if you can see that.
And that's the color.
And that's the color as well.
And that's a Hardy product?
It's the Hardy stucco board.
Yes.
Okay.
Same board as what's on the house at 136.
Okay.
And then last but not least, right here, this one right here is the dark gray shingle. That's the actual sample piece on this board. Oops, sorry. Right here is a picture of it. So it's a little bit glossy, maybe hard to see with the light on it, but it's a dark gray architectural grade shingle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that a different shingle than what's on the house next door?
Slightly different color. Same roof.
Yeah.
It's the one in the, sorry, can you hold it up again? I know it's properly. The one on the my right, your left, is that the color, or the one on your right and my left?
The one with the round tag.
Okay, so the one on the right, is that more like an asphalt shingle?
That's more of a black, a darker.
Okay,
Well, it's actually too monotone, in my opinion.
no, I was just asking. It's hard to tell on
Sure.
that, so thank you.
Any other materials, Chris?
No, that's it. The
Okay.
hardy trim, I don't have any like, I mean, it's pretty much the same color. It's just a smooth trim, so.
Sure. I think the materials and the colors look good. I think it'll be a great addition to the house that's going up. And Bobby, is that other house at 136, is it sold?
It's under contract. We're waiting for our as-built to be approved, hopefully this week, because we've got closing in 2 weeks. So great buyer.
Good. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
As far as this one at 132, I think it is,
Yes.
I think it looks great. And we've already heard that the concrete will be the aggregate concrete for the driveway. So that effectively removes the staff reviews condition. Rich, any other comments?
Nope, looks great. Like it.
Carolyn?
Nope.
Helen?
Yes, I do have a comment on, or a question really, on sheet A10 with the elevation. There appears to be, just under the second floor windows, a light color brick line.
No, definitely not. What is it, Chris?
Limestone trim wrapping around the side of the building that stops at the first offset.
Yeah.
Okay, it wraps around on the right elevation, but on the left elevation, it doesn't wrap around.
Well, okay, so I apologize. That's, we had a little bit issue with the render following through with some of this, so it does wrap around on the other elevation.
Okay,
Well, yeah, it'll wrap around appropriately, just like it does on the other side.
okay, and basically dead end at the large bay.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, no, I like that detail.
That would be nice. It's just a language barrier with the people who do the color rendering.
Yeah.
No, I realize. Details, even when you do them in-house and you know it, it still can get.
Like pulling teeth sometimes.
Okay, no, I think it looks good. I like it.
Good, thank you.
David?
I don't have any questions or concerns.
Okay. Well, with that, we have a staff recommendation to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to approve, given the, that it will be exposed aggregate pavement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thanks, Bobby, Doug, and Chris. You're on the way.
Thank
Good
you very
luck
much.
Good luck with this one, as with 136.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, let's see. Well, I think we have now come to item number 4. And where did that go? And that would be the presentation by H3 Design Studios. Susan, do you have an introduction?
You're muted, Susan.
Sorry. This is an informational overview of the recently completed Downtown Overlay District study by H3 Design Studios. Within your packet, I included the final draft development standards and final draft design guidelines that were culminated as a result of the study, or that had culminated from the result of the study. And both the draft development standards in text and design guidelines in text as well. And so really, as I talked about in the report, there was a little bit of time lapse between when the study was completed And now we're getting ready to possibly adopt some of these standards. So I asked H3 Design Studios to come give the Plan Commission an overview of the study, just to kind of refresh your memory and get your minds back into, you know, what we talked about. It was quite an extensive amount of time. We worked with a really great steering committee. A couple of you were members. And so I just want to go ahead and bring everybody up to speed in anticipation of future code amendments. So I'll hand it over to Tim and John.
Great. Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone. It's good to see everyone again. It's been a little while. So as Susan mentioned, what we want to do tonight is really to kind of run through a fairly brief summary of the planning process that we helped facilitate with you all and with the steering committee, really kind of focusing on the summary of the decision-making process through the planning process over the last year or so. And then we'll present a summary of the final draft development standards recommendations and an outline of the design guidelines. So again, the meeting is to really the objective of the meeting is to review these, the final draft development standards and design guideline recommendations for the downtown Central Business District, downtown and Central Business District core overlay districts. And one point to note before we get started is that the boundary that you see on the map, that is the modified Central Business District core overlay district. Per the recommendation of the steering committee, the two existing overlays, the downtown core and CBD, are consolidated into one district with a few expansions to cover some key properties. The engagement activities consisted of a series of meetings with different groups. We began with some extensive interviews of both the mayor, the board of aldermen, and the members of and you all, the members of the Planning Commission Architectural Review Board, as well as some stakeholder interviews with other key stakeholders in the district. Following that, we conducted two visioning work sessions on April 17th and May 1st, 2020, so a little over a year ago. The first one with the Board of Aldermen and the second with the Planning Commission. Then we conducted a series of 4 work sessions with the steering committee, including a site walk on July 7th, where we actually walked the district and talked about some of the implications on site. And then we had a series of 3 joint work sessions between the Board of Aldermen and the Planning Commission, which were open sessions. Those occurred on May 22nd, October 23rd, and November 11th. So looking at the decision-making summary, during the first 2 visioning work sessions on April 17th and May 1st, and these were essentially the same sort of facilitated meeting, but with the 2 bodies, the Board of Aldermen and you all, the Planning Commission, we presented the existing conditions analysis and an analysis and 3D modeling of the existing overlay district regulations. And the key decisions that came out of those 2 work sessions were to combine the 2 existing overlay districts into a single new district and expand it to the east and to the south. There was a consensus that North Central Avenue should be redesigned to better function as downtown's primary dining and entertainment street, really in line with the entertainment overlay. In order to do that, there was support to remove 2 travel lanes and provide wider sidewalks. And there was also a consensus input that the development standards have to acknowledge the market conditions and not push every development into a planned unit development scenario, which is sort of the default condition today. So based on that feedback, our team developed 3 options, and these were presented in 2 separate meetings. There was the first of the joint Board of Aldermen and Planning Commission work sessions on May 22nd, and then our first meeting with the project steering committee on May 27th. We presented those 3 options, which primarily dealt with height and setback for the district. And there were no key decisions made at those first 2 meetings, but a variety of feedback was collected, which was then incorporated into revisions to those 3 options. So those 3 options were revised. We brought them back to the steering committee at their second meeting on June 11th. So we presented those 3 updated district height and setback options. Key decisions that came out of that, there was a consensus that a 3-story minimum building height in the district was appropriate. There was also consensus that a 6-story maximum building height before any upper floor step backs was also appropriate. We heard consensus input that Maryland Avenue must have a contextual relationship to the neighborhoods to the north. There was a general consensus that a 10-story to 20-story step up from Maryland moving south into the district was appropriate. And finally, there was a general consensus that all buildings should have an upper floor step back above 6 stories, so that the streets don't become like canyons, and that the mass of the buildings is reduced as you move up. So these options, then we took these out with the committee at their third meeting, which was the site walk. And you can see the route that we took here on the map. But basically, we wanted to walk with the committee members, look at some key points, both in the district itself, as well as in the Old Town neighborhood north of Maryland, in order to understand some of the physical implications of these. And so some key decisions that came out of this third meeting, again, a reconfirmation of a 6-story maximum building height before an upper floor step back. The provision of upper floor step backs along North Central and Beamiston in order to reduce the visual bulk of the buildings and provide a better visual transition between the residential neighborhoods and downtown. There was a consensus that west of Merrimack Avenue, kind of going down the hill towards Brentwood, that higher maximum building heights are appropriate and no upper floor step backs are required because of the existing height of existing buildings in that section of Maryland. And finally, when we were in the district, there was a lot of talk about the importance of the architectural design guidelines in order to really guide decision-making about the human scale articulation of the buildings and the building facades in order to maintain the character of the streets. So using that feedback and the feedback gathered up to that point, we then prepared a hybrid height and setback preferred option and a first draft of the architectural design guidelines. These were presented to the steering committee at their fourth meeting on September 16th. Again, the key decisions, the confirmation of the 3-story max building, or 3-story minimum building height, pardon me, a confirmation of the 6-story max height before upper floor step backs on Central Avenue, Beamiston Avenue, Forsyth Boulevard, and Maryland Avenue. Confirmation that maximum building height along Maryland Avenue east of Merrimack is 10 stories. And confirmation of a transition from a 10-story maximum building height to a 25-story maximum building height that would basically occur west of Merrimack and south of the alley between Maryland and Forsyth. And then finally, identification of the architectural design guidelines components, confirmation of that. And then we presented the draft development standards at the second of the joint Board of Aldermen and Planning Commission work sessions on October 23rd. And the key decision there was confirmation of all of the development standards draft recommendations. And then finally, we presented the draft of the architectural design guidelines at the third joint session on November 11th. And there was discussion and documentation of the proposed revisions to the architectural design guidelines that was based on written review by you all. And finally, there was confirmation of all of the architectural design guideline draft recommendations, which were included in the materials then that Susan distributed as part of your packets. So before we move on to the second part of the presentation tonight, are there any questions or discussion regarding the planning process and the summary of the decision-making framework that was facilitated with you all during the process?
Well, Tim, I appreciate that going through it again, because it's been probably well over a year since most of us have been familiar with it. So I think that that's a good start going into both the development standards and the design guidelines.
Great, thank you, Steve. If there are no other comments, then we'll move on to the second portion, which is basically a presentation of the final draft development standards and design guidelines. So as you will likely recall from our process last year, the recommendations for the districts fall into one of two categories. There are development standards and design guidelines. The development standards are, these govern the placement, configuration, height, and bulk of the maximum and minimum building envelope. And these would be the regulatory overlay that are moving forward for hopeful eventual adoption. So these are regulatory, and these comprise the zoning code overlay of the district. The design guidelines, on the other hand, are focused on fostering design excellence and the identity and character of the district at the scale of buildings, landscape, and open space. These can be either regulatory or advisory. And in this process, it has been recommended, and the intent moving forward is that the design guidelines will be advisory criteria that the city, the Planning Commission, the Architectural Review Board will use in the evaluation of projects according to the new development standards. And these are both integral components in creating the vibrant entertainment district that's envisioned for this overlay district. So part one, the development standards. We'd first like to just reiterate the boundary description for the district. So as we mentioned earlier, the updates to the overlay includes the consolidation of the two existing overlay districts, the downtown overlay district and the CBD overlay district, into a single overlay, and it's been expanded to meet the boundaries that are shown. So essentially the center line of Maryland Avenue to the center line of North Brentwood, south to the center line of Forsyth, south on South Central to the center line of Carondelet, and then north on South Beamiston to the alley between Carondelet and Forsyth, and then basically up behind, following the property lines behind the post office and City Hall. So what this does is this includes a couple of key properties, namely the large parking lot across from the government center, and as well as the Forsyth Place development at the corner of Forsyth and Brentwood. So what's important about this is that while some of the parcels within the current districts have been excluded over time due to the approval of PUDs, this basically sets a more consistent district boundary that pulls in some key potential future redevelopment areas, as well as ensures that if current projects are ever redeveloped in the future, that those properties fall within the guidelines, or within the development standards, rather. The development standards are organized according to 7 key criteria. So there's building placement, building height, encroachments, which deal with elements of the building that overhang the public right-of-way or sidewalk, building use requirements for both ground floor and upper floor uses, parking and building services, and then building types and frontage types. And we'll go through each of those now one by one. So in terms of building placement, the first criteria is the build to line, which refers to the specific line at which the building facade will be placed as measured from the parcel boundary. And the build to line for all streets, all primary streets, which is all streets within the district, is set at 0 feet, and that's from the ground level to floor 6. Some notes to take to be mindful of. The regulations stipulate that ground floor facades may be set back from the build to line for building entrances, open air seating and dining areas, and other programmatic uses, up to a maximum of 12 feet. So that's up to a maximum of a 12-foot setback, and up to a maximum of 25% of the total facade length. Furthermore, upper floor facades may be set back from the build to line for facade articulation, again, up to a maximum of 12 feet and up to a maximum of 50% of the total facade length. Setback, this refers to the distance at which the building facade will be placed from the parcel boundary as measured from the parcel boundary. And this applies to side lot conditions, so where parcels abut other parcels, as well as alley conditions where parcels abut alleys. And setbacks are set at a minimum of 0 feet and a maximum of 5 feet on the side lot line, and at a minimum of 0 feet and a maximum of 15 feet on the alley lot line. So again, fundamentally, we want the guidelines to, or the development standards to maximize the continuous building wall facing the street with that 5-foot maximum setback. So you'd have no more than a 10-foot gap between buildings at property lines. And in fact, the 0 feet minimum side setback would permit continuous party wall development of adjoining buildings along the block face. And then in terms of the building form, this refers to the percentage of the build to line that is required to be built. So on primary streets, that percentage is a minimum of 85% and a maximum of 100%. And so again, that really refers to, when we think of the face of the parcel where it faces the street, in all cases on all streets, a minimum of 85% of that total length would be required to be occupied by a building, and it could go up to 100%, so permitting full coverage of that frontage. 2 notes with this. For corner parcels with 2 or more primary street frontages, like this parcel here at the corner of Maryland and North Brentwood, the building must be located at the corner. So in other words, that 85% minimum would have to, if there was a gap or an area that was not built, that area would have to occur away from the corner, not at the corner. And then finally, up to 25% of the build-to line may be set back up to 10 feet. So that permits, again, various articulations, particularly at the corners of buildings, to provide for different public realm treatments. Now moving on to building height. So this refers to the height of the building measured in stories or feet from the mean adjacent grade to the eave or base of the parapet. So for the entire district, all parcels located within the district, the minimum building height is 3 stories or 45 feet. And there are 2 maximum building heights dependent on the location of parcels within the district. So for parcels located east of North Merrimack, west of the westernmost district boundary, and north of the service alley between Maryland Avenue and Forsyth Boulevard, so the parcels shown in red, those parcels have a maximum building height of 10 stories or 140 feet. And for all other parcels shown in violet, those parcels have a maximum building height of 25 stories or 300 feet. That maximum height is further governed by an upper floor step back requirement, which is keyed by street. So you can see them here and we'll go through them one by one. So first, for all parcels or all building frontages fronting North Central Avenue and South Central Avenue, shown in red, there is a 40-foot setback of the building, of the upper stories, that is required above floor 6. So a minimum of a 40-foot upper floor step back above floor 6 or 80 feet is mandatory for all facades facing North Central and South Central Avenue. Then for all building facades fronting along Forsyth Boulevard, shown in pink, there is a minimum of a 50-foot mandatory step back for all floors beginning above floor 6 or 80 feet. Along Maryland Avenue, shown in blue, there is a minimum of a 60-foot upper floor step back for all facades facing Maryland above floor 6 or 80 feet. And finally, along North Beamiston Avenue, shown in yellow, there is a minimum 70-foot upper floor step back mandatory for all floors above floor 6 or 80 feet. So again, what this does, what these step backs do, is they basically establish a maximum height of 6 stories or 80 feet by which the buildings can be built to the 0 lot line. And then above that 6-story or 80 feet height, there are upper floor step backs that are required. And those step backs are generally keyed to other existing conditions along the street. So with Central being the most dense, we wanted to provide the minimum setback that would still permit a good character of the urban street, not overwhelm with kind of a canyon effect. That's at 40 feet. 50 feet along Forsyth is generally keyed to the setback of the county police building. 70 feet along North Beamiston is generally keyed to the front setback of City Hall. And then 60 feet along Maryland provides a more comfortable transition between the residential neighborhoods to the north and the additional building height up to 10 stories facing Maryland Avenue. We also specify in the development standards a finished ground floor level, as well as a ground floor ceiling height and upper floor ceiling heights for development, which you can see here. So a finished ground floor level is 0 feet above the adjacent grade. Finished ground floor ceiling heights, a 12-foot minimum up to a 16-foot maximum for the ground floor. And then upper floors, it's a 9-foot minimum up to a 12-foot maximum on the upper floors. Again, this is to provide some parity and relationship between neighboring buildings to ensure that that stories are generally comparable to one another, and to ensure that particularly the ground floor has a taller ceiling height in order to accommodate commercial, restaurant, dining, and other retail activities on the ground floor. And so when we begin to kind of model the impacts of these, looking at the district, this is the 3-story minimum height, and then the 6-story, which is the maximum no step back height. And then finally, the maximum height of 10 stories north of the service alley, transitioning up to 25 stories south of the service alley, and looking at the various step back requirements by street. So you can see that, you know, the guidelines are designed to permit height, but to do so in a way that's contextually sensitive and works well within the context of both existing development in downtown, as well as the residential neighborhoods to the north. So again, when we begin to look at the existing conditions in more detail and looking at the district, these are the existing conditions today. This would be the 3-story minimum building height, the 6-story maximum no setback height, and then the maximum height of 10 to 25 stories. Then moving into the encroachments. So again, this refers to any building or part of a building that would physically intrude upon, overlap, or otherwise trespass across the build-to line, adjacent property, or adjacent public right-of-way. These typically applies to things like building signage, awnings, balconies, bay windows, and outdoor seating and dining areas. So for on the primary street frontages, which are basically all street frontages, there is a 6-foot maximum encroachment that's permitted. This is again to designed to permit a variety of building articulation elements, shading structures, as well as the ability for ground floor users to have sidewalk program areas for outdoor dining and things like that. And on the side frontages and alley frontages of the parcels, there are no encroachments that are permitted. So this would only apply to the public sidewalk and the street-facing facades of the buildings. And then looking at uses, the primary ground floor use in the district would include would be entertainment and dining uses, as well as primary retail. It is important to note that we are specifying that primary retail would be permitted as a conditional use only for all building frontages along North Central Avenue, whereas it would be permitted as a by right use in every other ground floor building within the district. This came out from feedback that we heard both from the Planning Commission as well as the Steering Committee about really focusing and requiring developers who are building along North Central to have the entertainment dining uses as their ground floor and not other retail uses. And then the upper floor use in the entirety of the district would include secondary retail and service, office, and residential uses. Then moving on to parking and building service. So in terms of location, parking will generally be located at the interior of the block. Surface and above grade parking is required to be set back from the build to line. Below grade parking may be located at the build to line. So for above grade parking, there is a 60-foot minimum setback from the build to line in all cases. That is to ensure that that any above grade or parking structures have an actual programmable liner of building program use in front of them between the parking and the street. One thing that we don't want to have in the district is, for instance, a retail or entertainment ground floor, and then above that simply a facade covering a parking garage. We want to make sure that building podiums actually have programmable space at their facade. So any above grade or structured parking is required to be set back 60 feet to permit things like office or residential units at the street. And then there is no below grade setback at all. So any underground parking would be permitted to go all the way to the parcel line. And then looking at parking access, parking and building service will generally be accessed from existing service alleys. If the parcels to be developed have access to or abut an existing service alley, parking and building service access is required to occur from that service alley. If parcels to be developed do not have access to or abut an existing service alley, then parking and building service access may occur from adjacent streets, subject to the following requirements. No access may be provided on the following streets: North Merrimack Avenue, North Central Avenue, South Central Avenue, or North Beamiston. So basically all street parking and building service access would have to occur from either Maryland or Forsyth Boulevard, and no access may be provided within 60 feet of a street corner. So those are the general parameters that define the building form and placement and the location of building services, as well as upper floor and ground floor use within the district. And then there are a series of building types which are presented in the recommendations. So the purpose and intent of the building types is to ensure that buildings within the overlay district are consistent with the character goals of the development standards. Building types are a series of model buildings for development, which are both regional in application and particular to downtown Clayton, the overlay district. And all of the building types that are presented would be permitted throughout the overlay district. So that would include live-work building, building of separate units that would have essentially attached ground floor storefronts attached to residential units above. A flex building, which is a multi-use building for retail, commercial, office, and residential. A commercial block building, this would be kind of a typical mixed-use building, similar to other development projects that have been completed in the district recently, including the Ceylon. A high-rise residential building, this would be primarily a residential only building. I apologize for the typo here. This should say a podium building. So this is again a typology where you can have office or residential building, residential uses in essentially a tower that is located above a podium, typically with ground floor use or commercial uses on the ground floor and some sort of structured parking behind a liner within the podium. And then finally, liner buildings themselves, which are buildings that would be built in front of a parking garage typically. So those are the intended building types for the district. And then finally, the frontage types. These are designed to provide a series of options for how a chosen building type will address the street in order to provide variety in building features and encourage a vibrant and active street life. These would vary in their suitability for different uses. So building frontage types really need to be keyed to the particular use. Shop fronts, for instance, for primary retail or dining uses, balconies for residential uses, etc. And the frontage types within the proposed overlay recommendations state that each building must use at least one frontage type on the ground floor, as well as at least one frontage type on the upper floor, but could feature multiple frontage types. All frontage types presented in the recommendations are permitted throughout the district, really based on their applicability to the use. So the frontage types that are included would be stoops. This would be for residential units exiting onto the sidewalk, awnings and canopies, which would pertain mostly to storefronts and used in combination with storefronts, balconies, which would be used primarily with residential units, bay windows or oriel windows, which could be used either on the ground floor or upper floors for a variety of residential, office, and commercial uses. And then shop fronts, which would be the primary ground floor commercial use, and cafes, which is a variation permitting an interior setback for dining that would be used primarily with restaurant and entertainment uses on the ground floor. So that is a quick summary of the design or the development standards recommendations that are included. And then before we conclude the presentation, we just want to quickly touch on the design guidelines themselves. We won't go through these in detail, but I just want to provide a quick outline and an objective for the design guidelines, which you have in your packet. So the objective and definitions for the design guidelines is to achieve design excellence in a vibrant, attractive, and human scale downtown entertainment district. These really are intended to expand entertainment opportunities in a pedestrian-focused commercial and service node of downtown, allowing for more destination venues, which comes from the entertainment district overlay. And to this end, project design should contribute to a distinctive district character and identity while providing a positive human scale pedestrian-oriented experience and encouraging architectural contextuality, creativity, and diversity. So this is really the intent of the design guidelines. In order to achieve that intent, guidelines have been formulated according to the 6 categories that you see here on the left. So there are a series of design excellence principles for the district. There are district guidelines which deal with the general overlay district and its urban form. Then there are architectural guidelines specific to buildings, as well as building elements and materials, landscape guidelines, and public art and placemaking guidelines. And so we can certainly answer any questions you have about those, but I won't go through those in detail because they are quite extensive. But those form that advisory document that works in conjunction with the development standards to ensure a high quality of development within the district. So with that, I will stop talking and pass it back to you all for any questions or comments.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. That I think really more or less pulled it all together and hopefully refreshed all of our minds on the development standards. I did have a question on 1.6, the building types. That was near the very end. There are 4 building types, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and well, actually there's 6. Sorry about that. And we have a proposed project that we reviewed late last year. It's called Beamiston Place. Does that fit into the live work or the commercial or the liner building? which makes me think then that we may at some point see building types of any one of these types, but also there are many hybrid types that we could probably be considering.
Right. No, Steve, that's a really great point. And I think it's important to note that that the building types are not they're not necessarily designed to be exhaustive. And in fact, they're not designed really to limit in terms of the specifics as you were mentioning, but rather they're designed to provide some models for development which can be used by the Planning Commission, the Architectural Review Board, when evaluating the suitability of a project for the district. So, specifically referring to the Beamiston Place development, yes, it does absolutely have elements of both the live work building, the commercial block building, and the liner building as part of it. In general, I would say that it would probably most align with a commercial block building, but it does have live work units facing Maryland Avenue, and it does have aspects of a liner building as well, because it does have the interior structured parking. But I think it's a good point that, and perhaps something that needs to be included in the development guidelines that state that these building types are not necessarily exhaustive, and that hybrids of elements of all of these building types could potentially be included in a single project.
Okay. Well, thanks for that explanation. I wanted to make sure that these were not absolutes, but they are guidelines really for us. Okay.
Right.
Let's see if we have any other comments at this point. Rich?
I'm still confused about one thing, and I know I've asked this question before. The build to line, where, and I understand it's a build to line is a 0 feet, with the intent that you're keeping the activity on the sidewalk.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right.
So
yes.
I look, and then you have this other criteria that talks about corners, and that if there's any bit of setback, which you're saying is a maximum of 12 feet, which I guess is enough to put some tables for a cafe or something. It can't be on a corner, correct?
Rich, I think what you're referring to is in terms of the building form, and so this refers to the percentage of the build to line that's required to be built. So, in other words, if you think of a given parcel, the combination of the build to line, the side and alley setbacks, and the building form percentages, they would permit a 100% coverage of the parcel, but a minimum of 85% of both of the facades, or in the case of an interior parcel like this, the single street facing facade is required to be built. Now, when it comes to the corner condition, what we're basically stating is that the overall building form needs to be located at the corner. So, in other words, that 85%, it shouldn't be measured from the side lot condition to the corner. It rather should be measured from the corner and located. Now, that being said, that that building, that building form or building occupation criteria can be further modified by a corner inset or another setback as specified in our build to line, which permits that up to a maximum of 12 feet up to maximum.
Let me simplify my question maybe.
Yeah.
Right, that picture you have there, the A
Yes.
is pointing to Oceana.
Correct. Yes.
Oceana.
Yes.
Right across the street from that is Herbie's. Herbie's has a
Correct,
beautiful patio and that is very busy, kind of like Napoli, has a great patio. It's very busy.
Yes.
If Oceana, which is very likely, if that building comes down, do these guidelines say that we can't build something that would mimic Herbie's and provide Oceana with a bigger patio?
No, they don't prohibit that. So in a simple way of thinking of it, this corner here, you could actually take a quarter of the facade facing Maryland and a quarter of the facade facing Brentwood. And you could set both of them back up to 12 feet, and that could both occur at the corner. Just because that setback is permitted, that additional setback, that does not run afoul of the building form.
Right. Okay.
Requirement.
But you're saying it's 12 feet, not what Herbie's has now. Herbie's would not be allowed under these new development guidelines.
Well, that's a good point. If it's because if their step back is more than 12 feet, then yes, that would.
It's about 20 feet, I think. I don't know. I never measured it, but it's pretty good size.
Right.
Got a piece of art sitting in the middle of it. It's okay.
So, Rich, what I will say is there are additional design guidelines dealing with that exact issue that we didn't go through tonight in detail relative to the form standards, and certainly if the dimensional requirements and I do know that this issue has come up in the past, and the current iteration of the recommendations is seeking to address that. But if there is a general feeling that these are not that these would not permit desired characteristics, then certainly some of those dimensional requirements can be revisited.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Carolyn?
Yeah. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Carolyn. How are you?
Good. How are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
I have a question. It's a big loaded one. I'll start with this question, and then I want to ask a specific question about the plan. Okay, I'm going to lead into it. What do you think is the role of architecture and urban design in the current pandemic and in the future of architecture and urban design and street everything design? Now, with that in mind, how much do we need to consider office space and how we need to reconsider the needs for that, and actual open space, frankly, and more housing and everything else? So I'm bringing this up because I know you guys are really, really freaking smart. And right now we're in a situation where people are not going to be leasing, and the housing market is going through the roof for sellers, as you know. But people are not really going, they're going back to the office, but not to the same degree, and they probably never will, or for a little bit. So how do we adapt this plan to that? I know it's a good question because you already did all the work. So,
I mean, quite simply, you know, in terms of the uses,
yeah,
up ahead. Basically, the upper floor permitted upper floor uses are quite flexible. So any, you know, office is certainly included, but so is residential, and so are, you know, secondary retail and service type businesses, you know, professional services, things like that. I think the intent behind this study and behind the updates of the design guidelines was really driven by the desire to have to maintain and in fact increase the vibrancy and vitality of the ground floor of the ground level of the district and the streets.
yeah, and you know what,
you uses.
That's not going to change with whatever you do. That won't change. So I agree with that. That's great.
So in terms of in terms of the upper floors, and really, you know, when you think of the most of the leasable or rentable space of the buildings, or, you know, occupiable space, I think the idea behind this was really to be flexible, and you know, certainly I agree with you with the way that the housing market is going now. We would certainly anticipate that development, you know, probably at least over the next couple of years as it occurs, would be mixed use development, would be primarily residential on the upper floors, and that's very welcome, and, you know, certainly permitted in this, as is office and other things. So, you know, we from a use perspective, we wanted to keep it as flexible as possible within, you know, within the kind of the urban context of downtown Clayton, and really govern the overall massing and form of the building and the relationship of the buildings and the streets, to maintain and enhance that vibrant street character that makes this district very identifiable within downtown.
Yep, I hear you.
I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, you know, I've known you for years, a while ago, but I actually wanted your opinion on it more than your. Well, I'm just curious as to how everybody in the board feels about this. I mean, how much do you think? I went downtown today to drop off my husband because I had to go to a job site, and we have one car because during COVID, we were like, we don't need two cars, and his car was horrible. So we got rid of it. And I had to drive him down there, and I'm like driving back, and I'm seeing like all these signs, office space for lease. So I'm just wondering, you know, what is the next move? What is the next wave of cities? What are we doing? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting philosophical here, but Tim, I know you, and I think you have an opinion on this, and I just don't want to hear, well, we've got office space on the top or residential. I think there's an opinion there, and I would like to hear it. I mean, I don't know that. I think retail on the bottom is a great idea now, especially because people are going to be walking around. Is there, you know, I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I do think, and, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when we were working with the city and the board and engaging with the developer for the Beamiston Place project end of last summer, you know, I mean, that exact consideration was informing a lot of how they were planning that project, and some of the types of units and building amenities and things like that they were designing. So, I mean, it's it's hard to know for sure, but I could say it's, you know, I think probably everyone would acknowledge that yes, the typologies for multifamily residential and the typologies for office buildings, and I mean, I think it's all going to be evolving given what's happened and what we're coming out of, and I think that I mean, you know, my opinion of it would be that we need to, that codes and development regulations need to permit flexibility in some of those areas while really focusing on the elements that make, you know, that make the city a great place to be. And
Yeah.
But yes, it is a philosophical discussion that we could probably have all night, but
Sorry. All right.
no.
That's what I had though. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Helen?
Yes, I do have a question. Where you're proposing to allow balconies and bay windows extend 6 feet into the public right of way. What limits their width? Could I take a building and extend a balcony the full length of the building, maybe 100 feet? You know, as an architect, a developer for a client, the developer wants to maximize allowable space. The architectural review board can look at it and say, it looks wrong, but there's that other argument that will say, you don't limit me, you allow me to go 6 feet out, but I can run that right around my building. And the same thing with bay windows. You know, we stick enough windows in an enclosed, you know, projection and call it a bay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an area that needs to be further refined. Because quite honestly, I am not a fan of giving public right-of-way to developers. As taxpayers, we're paying for it, and they're making money on what we're paying for. The other thing with balcony is that people like to put plantings on the railings. Well, when they water those plantings, hopefully I'm not walking beneath, all dressed to go to dinner or to work, to the office.
Mm-hmm.
So I see
Yeah.
in that part of the encroachments, I really see some issues that need to be further defined so that we don't wind up with problems.
No, Helen, I think that's a great point, and some of that, some of those items are covered in the architectural guidelines relative to things like you know, minimizing long horizontal elements and you know, breaking the facade up, but I think that, you know, there certainly could be, you know, some of that could be codified into the development standards as well, if that's desirable.
I would think it would be. I would like to see it in the development standards, and then we can further refine it in the architectural guidelines, but in the design guidelines. But you know, I work for developers, you know, as well as private clients. And I know that I'm looking for the loophole to get my client what they want. And I can make it look great. You know, you can wrap balconies around buildings and it looks fantastic. But from the citizens' point of view, I don't think that's what we want. We want something in the development guidelines so that it can be limited to what we're intending, as opposed to seeing someone, you know, just run with the idea. And then we've got something that if one person gets it past architectural review and the plan commission, then every other developer is lining up to do the same thing. And that's not what we're intending at this point in time.
Sure.
Now, that's my concern. The rest of it, I think, looks really good. I like.
No, that's a good point. Thank you for that.
Anything else, Helen?
No, that's it.
Okay. David?
No, I don't think I have any questions at this point. I'm pretty familiar with this, working with Tim and John over the last year or more. So I think I'm good for tonight.
Okay. Well, if Susan, if I understand the process correctly, beginning at our next meeting in July, we will be looking at the development standards and the design guidelines, probably in a different format. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I have gone through the drafts that you gave to us. Hopefully everyone else did. The development standards follow very, very closely to what Tim has been reviewing with us tonight. And as several of our members have said, I think we have some design guideline issues that we may want to look at in the future. Also, will all this information be given over to the steering committee that a few of us were on, but it was a much broader citizen-based committee?
Yes, so I set up on our pending applications page a file just for this project. And I've put everything you received tonight, the final report and the drafts in that file. I've let the steering committee know that it's there. I'll also be giving them, this meeting's recorded. And so I'll be sending them the recorded meeting so they can review it at their leisure. And I've also given them the schedule for consideration. So I hope that's adequate. I think, you know, in the past, we were looking at this under some pressure of impending development that, you know, wasn't at one point very desirable. We're not looking at that right now. So, you know, I don't feel, you know, that certainly we want to get this done and wrapped up, but we're not under any type of development related pressure where we've got to adopt these standards or we're going to get some type of development we don't want. So we've got a little bit of breathing room, but again, while it's still relatively fresh in everybody's mind, you know, we obviously need to move forward. We put quite a bit of work into this study, and the H3 Design Studios has done a fantastic job, and you know, anxious to get it wrapped up and into our code. So any future developers or development know what we're looking for.
Sure. Thanks, Susan. Tim, thank you very much. I have a comment that, Tim, were you speaking?
No.
I thought I heard a voice. Oh, okay.
We're getting an echo, Steve, for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why, but let me try again.
It went away.
Good. Okay. I have only one persona now. Tim, you know, as we go through a detailed process as we have over the last year or so, I always wonder how it's going to hold together. And I will admit that was a major question in my mind about the design and development guidelines and standards until I reread the whole thing that was distributed to us and then sat and listened to your presentation. So I do now feel that it hangs together and that the process had great validity. I only wish, as Susan indicated, that it had moved a little more quickly, but I don't think the situation we've been living in would have allowed that. So I appreciate what you and John have done and really look forward to the public hearings that will be coming up. And hopefully we can get this under control and under an ordinance, and then we'll be ready when the next big applicant comes in. So I thank you. But Tim, did you have any further comments tonight?
No, Steve, thank you though. But no further comments tonight. But I appreciate the remarks.
Okay. Before we finish this item number 4, does anyone else have any comments at this point?
Happy Father's Day to Tim.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, we thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 6th when we have our official planning public hearing. And David, was there anyone in the audience with their hand up?
Mr. Winkleman has his hand up. I'll bring him over now.
Okay. Hello, Hank. Can you hear us?
I incredibly appreciate the opportunity to look into the thinking that has occurred. And I want to say some of the comments about that Rich made, that we're dealing with public space and how it is used and openness and the allowability of new buildings to have that same sort of open breathing edge. I really appreciated Helen's comments that we're dealing with balconies. I look at buildings, you know, I intimately walk the streets. I know, I respect the buildings that have a setback and then they have a balcony. I think the incredible challenge for all of you is that this discussion didn't really deal with a little bit of a walk through the blocks. There are not many on the chessboard from west to east of how they are today, what the developers from Centene to Grondelet Plaza have taught us about retail, about streetscape, width, height. We need to reaffirm what our city can teach us about tomorrow. And I challenge you to not deal with this regulation and planning until you can visualize it into the three-dimensional world that our children are going to move through. That's your challenge. Rich, I really appreciated your remarks, and I challenge you all.
Thanks, Hank. And we appreciate you coming forth with your comments. David, was there anyone else?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Thank you. Well, then I think we will close out item number 4. And thank you, Tim and John. I see you are there. Do you have any comments, John, while you're online?
Hi, Rich and Steve. No, thank you all. I think it was a straightforward presentation. I love the comments. And I think that will bring another level of finesse to this as we move through the process. So thank you for the comments.
Okay. Well, thanks to both of you for leading us and bringing us to this point, and we'll keep working on it. Okay, thank you. We'll get ready to close out our meeting for tonight. However, before we go around the room, I wanted to say to Rich, I believe this is your last evening with us after virtually 3 years of your 2-year appointment. And we want to thank you for your critical thinking, critical questioning, and very valid participation. You've certainly earned your honorary planning and design credentials in the past 3 years. And we wish you a lot of enjoyment in your new aldermanic responsibilities and appointments. So thanks again. Always come back. Feel free to comment, and we'll look forward to your participation.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. If I may, I'd like to say to the staff, thank you very much, Susan, Anissa. I know you haven't been here for too long, but Kelly, everybody, I know they put together a lot of stuff in a short period of time usually, and we often demand a lot. So thank you very much. I think Stephanie dropped off, and wanted to thank her for her quiet guidance as we go through these processes. To the committee, and I'm sorry Bob and George aren't here as well, but I've learned from all your comments. Every time you guys say something, there's something to be learned from it. And I'm obviously, as I often say, I'm not an architect, but I like the design concepts, and it's always very intellectually stimulating. And Steve, terrific leadership. I know you've been at this for a while, but you really do a terrific job of leading this committee and placing the issues in the right context. It's been an honor serving under you. So thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the past 3 years. So
thank you.
I'll miss you guys.
Yes, and you will be missed.
We'll miss you very much. And thank you so much for your helpfulness. Absolutely. You're wonderful. And Steve, yeah.
Well,
you guys hear me? I don't even know. Okay, whatever. Love you all.
Thanks.
I will just add ditto.
Great.
Thank you.
David, any final words?
That's nice. I think we've covered it. Rich,
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
You still have to deal with me, David, so.
I know, just not on every other Monday night.
Yeah. Anissa?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Susan?
Thank you, Rich. I know I wrote you an email thanking you, but thank you again. It's been a pleasure working with you, and you've brought some terrific insight and asked some really great questions throughout the years, and really, really appreciate all your efforts, and we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Stay well, and we'll look forward to getting together on the 6th of July.
Great.
Good night.
See you guys.
Take care.
Take care.